Welcome to Hobby Clubhouse with a look at Gundam Shop Vol.2, Bandai's second plastic model encyclopedia covering all their Gundam kits from Z Gundam and onwards as of 1996. Volume 1 has already been covered in another video, which covers some basic information on the series, so do go have a look if you haven't already. This CD, the Gundam Shop Vol.2, was released in 1996, so it came back to back in the same year as Volume 1, and also sold for 3,500 yen as well. This one here is the Windows 3.1 and the Windows 95 version, and there is a separate Mac version that you can buy. Just like Volume 1, this is a 16-bit application, so even if you have this disc, it absolutely will not run on a modern Windows 10 system. I'm not sure about the Mac version, but I doubt that's gonna work either. As mentioned before, this CD covers all the products from Z Gundam onwards, so in 1996, that means this disc covers up to the Wing Gundam products. The box cover has a really well-detailed Z Gundam, and at first blush it looks like a master grade, but it seems to be one of the classic kits. Back is almost entirely the same as Volume 1, and it gives you an idea of what to expect, but we're gonna see all of that when we get to the software itself. And this one too is a bootleg copy I got when I was really small, so other than this outer sleeve, I can't show you anything else inside. So returning to our Japanese Windows 98 virtual machine, everything has been set up and ready to go after Volume 1. The program boots up in the same title sequence, but this time with a Volume 2 label added on. So it's pretty clear they use the same basic program with the content swapped out, but of course that makes perfect sense. Just like Volume 1, I've cut out the title music because it doesn't play properly, but there's supposed to be a single music track that's gonna play here, but otherwise the program has no music. Heading into the Gundam shop, we arrive at the same familiar first floor lobby that we've seen in Volume 1, but if we take a quick look around, we can see that they've stocked different models onto all of the store shelves. But before we see the kits, let's very quickly take a visit to the cashier and see the interactive list. This list lets you find any item on the CD quickly by using the filters here on the right hand side, and this time they've added some interesting ones, like the Aeropla button that filters kits with color separation versus the older kits that have a single color or two single colors, and this filters transformable MSs versus non-transformable ones. And this one filters anything that isn't a Gundam, so like the Hyakushiki and the Marasai. Okay, now that we've seen the list, let's get down to business and start here on the left shelf with the oldest kits. And here we see the 1/220 Z Gundam kits, which is a scale Bandai tried to push during this era, but they gave up after Z Gundam. These kits are technically not discontinued, but I've barely ever seen them ever reprinted after the late 90s, so they're a little bit hard to come by. The Rick Diaz here shows us the scale and the 300 yen price point, which means they're smaller than the 1144 kits, but they do cost the same, so that means Bandai was hoping to make a little bit more money with this line. It's a little bit strange, but Bandai does re-release this 1144 weapon set much more frequently than everything else on this page, or maybe it just sells better than all the other things. I mean, I'm sure Bandai would know. The next page here has the 1144 kits, which are also hardly ever reprinted, and many of the kits on this page are really hard to purchase, but with the exception of the 1300 Psycho Gundam Mk-II, actually the HGUC line has covered everything here, so come on Bandai, finish up this line, give us that one last one, Psycho Gundam Mk-II. Now I won't be looking at all these kits individually because they're technically still retail kits and we're here to see things that are no longer accessible to us, so otherwise we're gonna be here all day. But do let me know if there's something you desperately really must see and I'll show you in some future update video. So the next page brings us to F90, Gundam Sentinel, and then some 1100 Zeta kits. The S Gundam is a rites of passage for Gundam modelers of the 90s, and one does not take these kits in vain, and you bring your A game when you decide to buy one of these. The Garibaldi Beta kit here is a little bit interesting since this is still our only way to get it in 1/100 size, but good luck finding one because it has the same problem as every single other Zeta kit here and it isn't re-released all that much. The next page has some 1144 double Zeta kits, and they were not reprinted for many years during the 90s, but in recent years Bandai has shown them some love, and I think the Gundam base stores still have some of these in stock. Next are some more double Zeta kits, and then all of the Char's counterattack ones. And there aren't really any real surprises here. I think only the Alpha Azieru has absolutely no modern counterpart. I mean, I kinda missed the days when there was also only one single Jagan kit. And here we have 0080 and 0083. The 0080 kits are so good that you can buy them today and you'd still love them. Seriously, if you see these reprinted, get yourself one and see how something from 1989 can be so good. The 0083 kits were all terrible with the exception of GP03, which was a little bit too little and way too late. And can you believe that every single kit here has an HGUC counterpart, and that's really impressive. And next we've reached quite the opposite, and the F90 is the only kit here with multiple modern kits and the Begina Gina with the RE100 release, but every other design here is trapped in these old kits. The F91 kits vary quite a bit in quality. The gun tank R44 is exceptional and it's even really cheap. But the heavy gun is a single color tragedy. The silhouette formulas, I don't know, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some of them are pretty ugly, I really can't defend them all that much, and notably the silhouette Gundam here actually comes with this little booklet here, and that's neither mentioned nor scanned here, which is a shame. Okay, this page has a few gems that you can't get anymore. The first thing we have to look at has to be this thing right here. This is the 1:60 F91 kit. So this is currently the only way to get the F91 in this scale, but not only that, this kit is amazing for its age. It was the highest end F91 you could buy, and the kit uses system injection for multiple colors on one part, and then it has this pre-built inner frame, and I think this frame is likely the reason why Bandai hardly ever releases this kit anymore. But of course, we must look at the high-grade trio here, which are among the few kits that Bandai explicitly say they will no longer produce. First off, let's start with the Mk-II, whose proportions will look a little bit dated with modern eyes with its really wide chest. Looking inside the manual, it starts us off with Mk-II's background with its Earth supremacist roots because it was developed by the Titans. The next spread is another beautiful Katoki illustration of the G Defensor and all the other armaments. Next comes the fancy tech inside it, like the linear seat and the movable frame and everything. And then we get the Okawara color scheme and his love for big garish numbers. And then further down we get the instructions with these pages where Bandai boasts about how cutting edge this kit was, and it really was. It also reminds you that it does work with the old G Defensor, which was a really nice backwards compatibility they built in. And next up is the Z Gundam, and you may have heard this one before, but this Z Gundam is a little bit special. This is actually a variant of the Z Gundam, and they call it the Z Gundam with the wave shooter equipment installed, which refers to the big shield right here, and then also the different looking flying armor on the back, which is sideways and upside down. Now this is because in 1990, Bandai wanted a fully transforming Z Gundam in 1/144 scale, and they really had to make some engineering compromises, so this became some weird in-universe cousin of the Z Gundam. And I wasn't kidding in Volume 1 when I said the HG line is the benchmark of designs for the time, because the SD Ganso Gundam toy line made a wave shooter Z Gundam around that same time, so this was supposed to be the default look. Now maybe because this was my first Z Gundam kit, so I've always had a soft spot for it. But let's go on to the manual, and the first spread shows us the final showdown of the Z Gundam with the text below talking about the dawn of the 3rd generation mobile suits. And next we have another beautiful exploded diagram of the Z Gundam and its weapons. This page also details the in-universe reason for making the wave shooter configuration, which is that they supposedly say it's for better atmospheric flight and it borrows from the Zeta Plus's design. And speaking of the devil, the next page shows us the Zeta family's heads here, and it's all about the other MSs that the Zeta Gundam inspired. The middle spread is Okawara's color scheme for the Zeta, which frankly I don't like much, because the black is a key color on the Zeta and you just can't take it off the flying armor without affecting the look. But maybe this color scheme is something you'd like to try out. And lastly, on the show-off page, there's a lot of writing about the wave shooter changes. So all in all, this is a unique Zeta design that was largely forgotten until P Bandai made an HGUC re-release of it. For Double Zeta, comparatively there's less to say, and not because it's not great, because it can do the G-Fortress transformation and everything, but through today's eyes, we really won't find that so surprising anymore. So the manual part starts us off with Judo versus Haman, and the text is about the power-oriented design of the Double Zeta, big swords, big guns, and big forehead beam on a big fat mobile suit. And in this beautiful drawing here, we see the Double Zeta split into the core top, core block, and the core base. Now, I've never felt it did much in the story, and as an older and more cynical person, this seemed to be something designed to give the toys something more to do. but I don't think I hate it. I've just never bought nor not bought a double Zeta kit because of it. The next page gives us 4 iconic core fighters. This one for the double Zeta, this one for the S Gundam, and then this one for the RX-78, and then finally this one for the GP01. The Okawara coloring continues to substitute black for blue. It's not a big departure for the double Zeta design, I suppose. The show-off page has very little text, so you have to wonder if they didn't have as much love for this kit as all the other ones like the Zeta Gundam. And I mean, even the photos here are just ones they used on the box, so I can't help but feel that this is a little bit of a minimal effort. I mean, but either way, this is a glimpse into a kit that you and I can no longer buy anymore. And the next page here brings us up to Victory Gundam. Now all of these here are 1144 kits, and they're not very color accurate, but they are really good kits for painting and seam removal. So if you're a builder, get one of these and you'll find out that they're really a lot of fun. Next we have some 1100 kits from Victory and then also G Gundam, and all of them aren't too hard to find and you can easily get them for not a whole lot of money. Now the HG branding here was repurposed into all of these 1100 kits, and this went up all the way to Gundam X before they stopped doing 1100 high grades. In the corner here we have the Abigor and the slightly bigger Devil Gundam, and both of them are 1144 kits. The next page here are all 1144 kits with the G Gundam and the Gundam Wing, and you've probably seen all of these except for this one in the corner. Now what on earth is this? This is the G Gundam Great Upset for 1144 kits, and this is effectively a discontinued kit because Bandai has never included it in the many reprints of the G Gundam line. This kit adds the Super Mode to the Shining Gundam, and a spring-loaded Rose Bit launcher and a pointing hand for Rose, a chest piece for Maxter's boxing mode, and then 2 arm extensions for Dragon, and then, my favorite of the whole set, a Graviton hammer for Bulk with a metal chain. And here's the front of the box, which looks quite a bit different from the styling from all the other 1144 G Gundam kits, and it does have a backside showing you all the things equipped. I mean, this is a wonderful set to have, and it completes each of the mobile fighters a whole lot. And you know what? I have a set of this new in box. I mean, someday I'll make a video of it, but I need a Gundam Maxter first, and I can't find one. I don't know why that's such a hard thing to find. But returning to the kits, we're at the very end with the high-grade Wing Gundam kits and then the later 1144 releases. The HG kits, as expected, are still really nice purchases and you should give them a chance just to see the technology of the time. And with that, we're done looking at the tour of the first floor. Compared to Volume 1, this floor has much more kits and they span a lot more of the Gundam model history, so this was always a joy for me to go through over and over as a kid. But okay, on to the second floor, and we'll start right here on the right hand side with the timeline display. The timeline actually starts all the way from July 1980, so this covers everything that was already in the timeline in Volume 1, and that makes that old one obsolete. Now I'll scroll down the whole list and you can pause the video at any point to see anything that catches your eye. Now onto the video section. This time there are only anime and CM pages, and they removed the Bandai factory tour. But you know what? When I was looking on the disc, I found that video, and it's even a little bit different from the one in Volume 1, so we're gonna take a look at it later. But first, the animation page here has clips from all the different series as you'd expect. Now I won't be showing these here since nothing is different from their source material and they're of a really low resolution. So going over to the commercials page here, in 1996, this was an exclusive access to TV commercials long before the days of YouTube. And just like in Volume 1, these commercials are documented in higher quality by all sorts of Japanese YouTube channels, and you can find a link below to one of them. But let's enjoy our trip back to 1996, and let's have a look at the commercials as they appeared on this CD back to back.
ゼータガンダムの開発は成功した。新たなる局面を迎えた地球の運命は。機動戦士ゼータガンダムシリーズバンダイのプラモデル。ネオジオン軍はザクスリー1を開発。 対するエウーゴ可変攻撃型モビルスーツダブルゼータガンダムを完成。モビルスーツコレクションバンダイのプラモデル。宇宙世紀0088ネオジオン軍の地球侵攻を阻止せんとするエウーゴは RX78 ガンダムをベースにダブルゼータガンダムを完成。対するネオジオン軍ではジオンの象徴 MS-06 ザクザク3ワウへと発展。モビルスーツコレクション機動戦士ガンダムバンダイのプラモデル。
今新たな伝説が生まれる。驚異のクロスボーンヴァンガード。対抗できるのはヤクしかいない。機動戦士ガンダム F91 バンダイより発信。
ベスパかリガミリティアか、今始まる新たなるガンダムの伝説。バンダイビクトリーガンダムプラモデルコレクション。
最強のハイパーモードに変形した Z ガンダムはデビル軍団四天王マスターガンダムとの壮絶なバトルを繰り広げた。爆裂ゴッドフィンガーバンダイのプラモデル。
秘密結社オズの野望を砕け。地球に向け5体のガンダムが始動。緊急発進。バードタイプからモビルスーツへ変形。プラモデル新機能戦機ガンダムウィング。
迫り来る敵オズ迎撃に向けて衝撃の超変形モビルスーツ完成。伝説が今熱くよみがえる。プラモデルウィングガンダム0発進。
Okay, we're back. Now, before we leave the video section here, here's the Bandai factory tour video that was hidden on the disc. The display cases here on the left of the show floor is for Hobby Japan builds, but this time there's a twist. You see the 3D spinny icon here? This means the display can be rotated 360 degrees. It's actually pretty rare even today that you get to see a Hobby Japan build at all angles to your liking, so that's something quite special. So here we have the new Gundam from Gundam Weapons but colored in blue, and here's a quick turnaround. Of course, dioramas won't rotate, so these are just a single photo. And here's another diorama, this time of the F91. And then we have one more from Stardust Memory, which they also used in Gundam Weapons, I think. Then a slightly awkwardly posed V2 Assault Buster flying through space and stiff like a board. And then we have another 3D view, and this time of God Gundam, and I know this one for sure was featured in Gundam Weapons. Lastly, we have Wing Gundam 0 with his rifle out, again with a quick turnaround. And that's the second floor. The leftmost display case here is the bottom row of the models we just saw, so that's everything. And like I said before in Volume 1, in the days of the internet and YouTube, this floor really has lost a bit of its charm, but in its own time in 1996, this was something you couldn't get in any other media like books or TV. Alright, I know you're eager to go down to the basement floor and see all the secrets, but I want to temper some expectations because Volume 2's secret data section is not as rich as the one in Volume 1, though there are still some interesting things, of course. But first, here's a quick gander at the people who made this disc, so pause it if you want to see a bit more of it. And then, let's first have a look at the discontinued kits here. So here we see the 1144 G Gundam kits in hyper mode, so they're all gold plated. I mean, I can't say I like these a whole lot, and they actually got one batch of re-release just recently, so I guess they're technically no longer discontinued. But really, even back in the 90s, they just kinda sat around in stores. I mean, children aren't that dumb, and an all-gold version of Shining Gundam just doesn't offer us anything new. The God Gundam also got a gold HG kit, but it's a good thing they stopped at that. This kit is considerably more rare, though it's not necessarily more valuable, no one really wants it. But these guys on the left are indeed discontinued kits. These are non-scaled entry-level G Gundam kits, and as you can see, Shining Gundam here has a solid block shoulder, and his entire lower leg is just 2 pieces. For curiosity's sakes, this is Dragon Gundam, Gundam Mk-II, Gundam Rose, and then God Gundam. And you'll notice that for some odd reason, Bolt isn't here, which just isn't right. The next page here has a bunch of recolored MSV kits released under the Z Gundam line. Now I don't know why they put them here in the secret area since Bandai actually re-releases these even more than the actual Z kits. On the right here are 2 Hyakushiki gold-plated kits. These really are just the plain kit but plated, so it's not that special, but they were indeed a limited release, so that's why they're here, and I suppose it is a fitting release for the Hyakushiki. So next we have some more high complete models, which are high-end pre-built figures in 1/144 scale. First up here is the Mk-II with a weird white blade antenna, but otherwise it's a good looking sculpt for the time, if not a little bit chunky on the legs. Next is the Hyakushiki with a really big thigh gap and a chest that looks really wide. But for the chest, it's only because we have modern eyes and our modern versions of Hyakushikis are very slimmed down and we've gotten used to that look. But this used to be the norm. Next is the Rick Diaz, which looks okay enough. I mean, the Rick Diaz design has a lot of character and it's really hard to make it look bad. And then we have the Hyzak, which I used to always see left over in stores. The snout of the head looks a little bit puckered forward, and it also has that odd thigh gap as well. And then we have the Zeta, which I've seen the Japanese make fun of many times on the internet, and you can easily see why. It looks pretty bad with a dinky little head and a really big chest, and they clearly made a lot of concessions to let it transform, but look at the Wave Rider, I mean it looks up ending pretty sad still, so I'm not sure if they did anything right here, and look how expensive it is. And now next is the Double Zeta, which looks a lot better. It still has that weird gray blade antenna thing going on, but it looks pretty nice. And it even does the G-Fortress transformation. It is the most expensive in the entire line at 3,500 yen. And lastly, we have the new Gundam. And you can see the fin funnels here are a single flat molded piece, so already that doesn't look all that good. The weapons are all solid gray and the forehead crest isn't black. I mean, it's not terrible, but the colors are just a bit off enough so that you'll notice it and you'll never be entirely happy with it, and especially not paying the 3,000 yen price in 1988. Then here we have the second half and the last half of the Micro Gundam line, which I've talked about a little bit in the Bandai 1995 model catalog video. The first half of the lineup was already cataloged in the first Gundam Shop CD, and we have 6 more here. First, we have the Victory Gundam, which is in dark blue and it looks a little bit off. The beam shield here is in pink, although I remember the actual product was in gray, so I'm not sure why they have this one here, but it does look good overall still. Then the lineup does its bizarro thing again with the Victory Gundam cannon with Chobam armor shoulders and front skirts and the 2 cannons slung over the shoulders. The description here is all in red text, which is to say they have absolutely no universe info to give you on this. Next is a proper Zaku F set, so no weird remixes here, just a Zaku that looks like as it should, and it's good stuff. And next, it's back to Bizarro Land with the Zaku F set with the high mobility legs and the backpack and the black tri-star color. It seems like a fun thing to try in kit bash, although no one's gonna know what you're referencing. And then we have the Zaku FZ Desert type, which isn't really a real thing, but if you think about it, I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be, I suppose. The FZ came way too late into the 1 Year War, but it's a sensible thing, and it's a good what-if thing. Then lastly, we have the same high mobility Zaku FZ again, but this time in white. And the back photo is wrong, and it shows a vanilla high mobility Zaku from the first wave. And these are exactly the same photos they used in Volume 1, so Bandai made the exact same mistake twice. But yeah, this is the very last Micro Gundam figure ever released, and they cut it after that. But this is a nice lead-in to our next section. So over in the shelf of unreleased items, we start off with the MS trailer, which carried the RX-78 on the first episode. And this is actually a drawing for the Micro Gundam release, so they did want to release accessories, which would have added a lot of variety in the line, and I know I would have wanted one. And here's another Micro Gundam item, and this is the Zeon Samson Trader, which looks a little bit more fun, but this will make even more sense when you see the next entry, the Goof. This goes perfectly along with the Samson trailer to recreate Ramba Rao's story, and also check this backpack here. Now pause the video to see if you can guess what this is. Okay, you done? That right there is the Zaku Mine Layer backpack, so they plan to do more of these weird mix-ups. And you know what? I'll do you one better and show you something that's not on this CD. So here's an ad for the Micro Gundam line, and here we see our Goof, but then look here, they actually planned the gun cannon as well. And they also wanted to make color variations of the Victory Gundam cannon and the almost full armor Gundam. I mean, they really ran out of ideas on what to make on the Gundam side of things here. But back to the CD, we have one last item here with the 1/220 Ball and Nox Saman. And this thing just really can't catch a break. It got no model in the 80s, and it's still got no model kit even today. I mean, yeah, it's kinda ugly, but we don't care about ugly, we want a full lineup. And I believe the HGUC Zeta line has released everything except for this, which is really strange. Oh no, and the Psycho Gundam Mk-II as well. So that brings us to the last shelf here, the prototype items. The first one here is what we now know as Mk-II, but here it's simply labeled as the new Gundam. And this was actually based off of an early design of the Mk-II. And this prototype was actually featured in this magazine scan here, and here we can also see the backside of this model. Also notice how here in the magazine they call it the Zeta Gundam, which fits in with how they hadn't finalized the names and details yet when this was made. And here's a closer look at the early designs front and back, and maybe you'd like to make one of these for yourself. So here we get a Mk-II that looks exactly like what we got in the end, only that this prototype was made as the Zeta Gundam. So today we learned a bit of history here, that the Mk-II was originally supposed to be the titular Zeta Gundam, before it later got demoted. So that's pretty neat, isn't it? Now next we have the Hyakushiki, with its name stylized like this. It says here that this prototype was made for a trade show, and this does look mostly like the later products and is a good representation. The gold color looks a little bit faded, so maybe they took this photo a little bit later after it was made. Here we have a straightforward product prototype of the Ewak Zack, although this one here is in gray. And then next here is a Rick DS prototype, and it says here that this one here is a wooden model, and Bandai used to prototype in soft wood, because you can't just go and spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on a mold if something you make either won't be produced or it's gonna look wrong and you need to adjust it. And here's a prototype Hyzak, and you can see here the leg is actually one solid sculpted piece and it has no joints yet. Next we get the Garibaldi Beta with really high up shoulders, so the top is almost one long flat line. The shield is also really small even though it's retracted. The hands look really big and they look a lot like what we later got on the Rick DS. The beam rifle looks like its final design, but the stock on the back of the gun is turned upwards to make room. Next up is the Gapfly, which actually looks really slim compared to the final model. And if you look at the hand here, you can see the prototype has much smaller ones. And here we have the Gazu L, because of the shoulder being on the left hand side. And you can see they used the retail Garibaldi Beta kit to make this prototype. And notice how the engravings are all raised, which would have looked really nice on the final kit, but of course, the final kit didn't have that. Next is a wooden God plant. And you can see this is a really sophisticated model, and they made joints and everything. And if we look at the final product, we can see the joints did indeed mostly follow that design, so this prototype was quite far along. Now next one is a Mk-III in wood, and this one is much rougher in comparison. It doesn't have any fists, and overall the contours are made mostly of straight lines and sharp angles, so a lot more work was put into this before we got the final kit. And then coming up near the end, this is a double Zeta prototype, and it doesn't look too assuming. It's clearly very far along in production, and it isn't as rough and abstract as the Mk-III that we've just seen. And then at the very end, we have the Psycho Gundam, probably used for the later 1300 kit. And if you look closely here, the MA form is an entire unique sculpt, so the poor guy making this had to sculpt both of these things separately. And so thank goodness designers today use AutoCAD programs and 3D printers, and way back then they had a much tougher time. So there you have it. That's all of Gundam Shop Volume 2. Now, as someone who grew up with kits like the ones inside of here, it makes me sad sometimes to hear people very quickly dismiss old kits as ugly or primitive or silly, and they are all those things. But at the same time, they do have a place in history that brought us to the wonderful kits that we have today, and maybe you'll want to pick up some of these old ones too someday and enjoy them precisely for how much they aren't as perfect as what we have today. And I sure hope you had a good time going through Gundam history with me here. Thank you so much for watching. Come look us up on social media with updates on upcoming videos and projects. Links are in the description below. Or hang out here a little bit longer and make sure to watch the Volume 1 video if you haven't already. But before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos from Hobby Clubhouse, and I'll see you next time.